Hey, everybody. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, John.
John McClellan.
Join the meeting.
Hey, everybody.
Afternoon and good evening.
Hey, Charlie, it's weird seeing you. I never see you in these meetings anymore.
No, not as often. No, that's
Good
for
to see you
sure.
tonight. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Eva.
Hey,
Hello,
everybody.
Juan.
I'm going to be eating my dinner, so I'm going to turn my video off, but I'm here.
There we go.
We won't believe it, but that's okay.
Christine said she might be a couple minutes late.
Okay. Well, she's not late yet, so we've got $16 people, I guess.
Nikki Haley is winning right now.
Oh, that's gonna last.
Who's that?
Yeah.
I forgot to put the waiting room on tonight's meeting, so we'll see how that goes. That's Phillips. That explains that. Who is 301 blah blah 8593?
That's me, John
John
McClellan.
McClellan.
Okay.
So are you gonna get 2 votes tonight, John?
He gets 5 votes.
He's got two squares.
He's got too many squares tied up, yeah. All right, well, we have everybody but Christine,
Is Rob here?
and Rob, you're right. There's Christine, okay. Couple more minutes and we'll get this show on the road.
Georgette, your video with Ernie is set up perfectly so that it looks like Ernie is in front of you. And he looks like he's a puppet.
It's true, it does.
Doesn't it? Yeah, it's great. Don't take that personally, Ernie.
All the usual suspects are here.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been open. What's that mean? Yeah, Rob's having a problem. It's, Bob probably has the wrong link. But I gave it to him just now. Okay. Maybe.
There we go.
There he is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, it's 7:36, so let's call the public hearing on ordinance 2023-08 to order. I can read the name, amending the Washington Grove zoning ordinance to expand housing opportunities and update vehicle parking requirements. This was proposed by the Planning Commission, transmitted to the council on December 11th. So we're holding the public hearing as specified in our charter. I could give a brief. Is anyone interested in a brief overview of this ordinance, or can we go directly to any testimony and public input? If you want a brief review, I'll make use of some slide provided by the Planning Commission for that purpose. No, well,
Yes, can we
No,
do a
thank
brief
you.
review?
sorry, Joan?
A brief review?
Brief, yeah, you think I can be brief? Well, there's
I'm
there's a
optimistic.
test for you.
Maybe that's why they didn't
Okay,
answer.
All right, well, here's this, brief, set of, slides.
John, before you start, is Rob here or not?
Yes, Rob's there. He
Thank you.
is in the he's there.
Got it.
Everyone's. All right, I don't think I need to define what an AD, well, maybe we will. It's subordinate, an ADU is a second dwelling unit subordinate to the owner occupied main one-family dwelling located on the lot, on the lot with the house. That is the one-family residence. They go by a lot of names. We're not going to go through all of that, sorry. Here's the formal definition, and with comparison to an accessory structure. So an accessory structure is just another building subordinate to the principal building or the residence. It's incidental to the use of the principal building. It's not attached in any way to the principal building. An accessory dwelling unit comes in two flavors. One is is an attached accessory dwelling unit that showed here in this middle drawing, showing the blue attached to the main residence, so still subordinate to the principal dwelling. It is a second dwelling unit, which is defined often by the presence of sleeping quarters, kitchen, and some other, which escapes me, but we'll see it sometime shortly. The other form of an ADU is detached. That's in the lower diagram, which is simply an accessory structure, in this case, intended for occupation by a residential unit, also containing the kitchen, living quarters, and bathroom facilities may be the third.
Do we need to define subordinate to, or is that already defined in the
That's defined. Subordinate means that the, well, don't let me just off the top of my head, but it's a defined, and I'm not sure that our ordinances use subordinate. They use different language. So they put forward their potential concerns. This is relative to Washington Grove adopting, enabling ADUs. One of them is enforcement, which the Planning Commission proposes to solve by simply adopting the Montgomery County ADU licensing process, which has been around for now 4 years, I think, and has been operating effectively. There was a presentation by some people out of that office a year or so ago, maybe, explaining their idea, presenting their experience. Okay, the other item is their concerns for parking. And from parking, and this is actually two here, two is actually three, parking, but also moving away from the Washington Grove single-family residential character. So they're really, those three are called out. Then what would change in our ordinances? And this is simply a summary of the effect. The actual ordinance changes are in the ordinance ZTA proposal. And we're not going to get into that tonight unless somebody addresses it. It changes the definition of the household, not the household, but the structure from one family to a single family primary residence. In addition, then, one attached or detached accessory dwelling unit, henceforth ADU, is permitted on the property, meeting specific criteria. And here's one: a maximum of 2 additional bedrooms, an on-site parking spot for each bedroom. So that would be, you'd have the property would have to have a maximum, because a maximum of 2 bedrooms. So if it had 2 bedrooms, 2 of the parking spots would be in conjunction with the ADU. The other 2 are required for the primary residence. That is already a requirement in our ordinances. And a maximum of 4 parking spots on-site, is also required currently, where possible. So keep in mind, some, a variety of our properties do not have room for all of these on-site parking, and they are exempted, and to the extent that off-site parking is available, restricted. And then the ADU must be licensed for rental by the Montgomery County Department of Housing. What would not change? There's no proposed change in the setbacks, the maximum height for any of the zones. The primary residence has to conform to building standards, and the detached ADU has to conform to accessory building standards. But in addition, it will have some of its own requirements. No change in lot coverage, no change in maximum enclosed space in each zone. These are already specified and wouldn't change. And once again, no change in the number of vehicles allowed to be parked or stored on each lot. So this is a rough summary of what the main features of the proposed ordinance is. So,
And I had a question for Georgette and/or Peter. Can you remind us, like, if somebody wanted to have an ADU, it doesn't matter whether it's attached or detached, but if they needed to add 1 or 2 parking spaces and they just wanted to put, say, gravel down on a part of their front yard next to where their 2 cars are, or they wanted to put asphalt down, what's the process for, is there a permitting process for that? Because part of the parking area would most likely be on town property.
Yes.
The part where it meets the street. Or I just wanted everybody to get reminded of whether that would have to be permitted or not separately.
Yes, it does have to be, and we have a specified permit for parking arrangements,
That's what I thought.
driveways.
And so does that permit requirement only apply if part of the area is on town property?
Yes.
So
Yes.
although I suspect 95% of the time town property would be involved.
Yes, but I could see, say, for example, at my house, it would not be impossible to not change the current driveway, but to add a gravel area that you would access by driving on the current driveway. And I don't think that would require a permit because you're not using any town land to do it.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to double check on that.
So how many cut-throughs would be allowed?
excuse me, John?
Georgette.
Oh,
Yeah, Georgette. Well, she just said that you'd have to have a permit if, let's say, you were not using a current driveway pass. So if you've got 4 parking spaces, could you feasibly get 4 cut-throughs through the road to town property onto private property? Is there a size limitation or the amount of land that you could cut over?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, John, and that's probably something that the planning commission should look at specifically and separately.
Mhm. And also, this doesn't really, I mean, okay, we're talking about ADUs right now, but this would just be in general for anybody.
Yeah.
It could be somebody that if
Correct.
you're allowed 4 parking spots, then it could come up. In fact, Craig with the church house, we had some discussions about that back then also. So that would be, as Georgette said, that would be handled individually by the planning commission.
Right.
And John, you said that there'd be an exception if the property did not have on-site parking. How what would the process of that be? Because I can see that
Oh,
being problem.
we have zones which are, have small lots.
Mhm.
And they generally have very little property for an accessory building. So one in general can't add on either parking or accessory building, nor could they do an ADU.
Gotcha.
So they still have everybody still is not supposed to have more than 4 vehicles per primary residence. By the way, that's 4 vehicles, period, stored or drivable. So you put 2 dead ones in the backyard, that counts. And we have gone after people with too many vehicles.
John, question on that, because I'm concerned about the enforcement. You say you've gone after people, but I sat here for 20 years listening to everybody scream about my neighbor having 10 or more cars parked every night, and nothing was ever done about it. How will this enforcement be any different than it was against Douglas?
Well, it won't. I mean, our parking is enforceable. Are you talking about the Washington Grove Lane in front on Washington Grove Lane?
Well, yeah, I mean, his address is Washington Grove Lane, but his parking is off of Oak. He's gone now. It's no longer an issue, but for 20 years, people were always screaming about him having all this.
Well, it is. I mean, I dealt with somebody on Washington Grove Lane who had 2 unregistered, who let the registration lapse. I think we took care of that, and it was during COVID. I can't.
Yeah, I don't know what that one was.
I can't speak to your issue, but we do have tools to deal with parking. You just have to do it. It's I mean, I know how to do it now, and I think we can do it effectively without ultimately going to fines. I mean, you threaten fines, you threaten towing, you can do all kinds of stuff, but yeah.
But for 20 years, none of it was done.
Well, I don't know that I can't even remember who you're talking about or what the complaints were, because
his address was 201 Washington Grove Lane, but it was the yellow house right next door to mine.
Yep. No, I know the house.
Apollo or whatever, and he consistently had 10 to 12 cars parked there every night.
Okay, well, what can I say? If it's not happening now, we can't do anything with.
No, but my question is, if it couldn't be enforced then, why do we think it can be enforced now? I'm being attacked by a cat.
It can be enforced.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is it can be enforced. You just have to go ahead and do it. We have the tools to enforce it. What more can I say?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and I can speak for myself as a member of the council, and I think maybe 1 or 2 other council people, that this is like the key to this working, is to ensure that there's only 4 cars. And we've had a few other examples where there's been cars parking on streets and they're not there any longer. Right. And we do not want to see this, because it's not going to work if we don't enforce our laws. And I think we've made that, we're getting our attorney involved. John's getting the attorney involved to help us with the abandoned houses. And I think that we're moving into a new era where we will be doing enforcement. Trust us,
Hey,
trust
hey,
us.
I
You're
don't.
elected
Well, I
officials.
wouldn't, you know, Peter, yeah, you know, the horse is for the barn on past incidents. So
Yeah, exactly.
the watchword should be we do have the tools to enforce it. It's just a matter of taking the appropriate steps. Let's not go back to talk about that individual, but anybody
No.
with 10 cars has other issues with that property other than cars. Okay. That was just a brief thing. I'm not gonna the ordinance consists of a pretty explicit set of whereases which explains what the approach of this ordinance is. I mean, I'm not going to show it because everybody should have read it. You'll have to read it on your own. You're welcome to comment on that whereases as well as the specific changes in the ordinances. If no one else wants to discuss anything in general, then let's move on.
I will. Hold on, John, I'd love to talk about things in general on this.
Well, if it's testimony, you can start your.
Oh, is this testimony? Okay. I don't
Well,
know.
it will
You tell
be,
me.
yeah, as soon as I get started on it. So far, we're just discussing, asking questions about what the intentions are and that sort of thing.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Then go ahead.
Okay, all right, in whatever order anyone cares to express what they came to say. Let's go ahead. I do want to say at the outset, as was said in the most recent Grove Alert, testifying, in person where there's an opportunity to have a little give and take is great and valuable. But anyone who is testifying should absolutely produce a written testimony for reference by the council. I think the council is going to take very seriously any objections. I know the planning commission, or not objections, any suggestions. I know the planning commission did. They spent a lot of time putting this together, looking at all from all sides, and then took a lot of your comments and others' comments into account and made some modifications. And now that's where we are with the council, and this time looking and taking into account your comments plus their own concerns. Okay, looks like Mimi raised her hand and she's up there. So Mimi.
Yeah, John, I just wondered, the line about the licensing of the ADUs by the people who oversee landlord-tenant relations or whatever that line was. Is that true if someone builds an in-law suite and doesn't intend to charge the rent?
You're asking about currently, if you have your in-laws staying in your house.
No, I'm asking if you build the ADU specifically for family.
Yes, you have to be licensed.
Well, it needs to be licensed even though, okay, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're charging for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next. Everybody else just came to listen. So we received some written comment already. In particular, we received written comment from the HPC and from RASIC. The HPC proposed two suggested changes. And RASIC, I think, proposed change. And you're welcome to read that. I think they're currently available. I'm going to try and make all of that stuff. It should be on the website, also in a Dropbox folder. which will be in the, if you don't, it was already in the announcement of the public hearing, but it will certainly be in the bulletin for anyone to read the public comments. But there's either Bob or I see Paula, would you like to just briefly summarize what the suggestions were from your respective committees regarding this? Bob, why don't you go first?
Okay, yeah, there were two changes. One is the there's the detached ADU has a limit of 800 square feet, and we were suggesting that the attached that it be applied to both types of ADUs, the 800 square foot limit. The reason being is if the sort of risk of being out of scale, the actual addition being out of scale is similar whether it's detached or attached, and there really should be a limit for both types. Then the other change was to enable the planning commission to actually act on the recommendations that the HPC provides in its review.
You mean to condition?
Yes.
To condition an ADU
Approval.
that doesn't somehow, doesn't fit the character issues and town issues.
Right. It's mostly dealing with scale.
Right.
If I can add to that, so the role of the HPC was modeled after what we have in the subdivision regulations.
Right.
And in there's a phrase which says that the planning commission can make conditions based on its authority to implement the master plan. So we've just copied that language for ADUs. And that is what allows the planning commission empowers them to set conditions based on the master plan. And so that can incorporate whatever the HPC says, but it's actually broader than that because it allows them to condition anything on the master plan, anything that's in the master plan having to do with this. So it gives the planning commission more authority to deal with whatever problems come down the line with ADUs.
So I have a question about that. I didn't see in the proposed ordinance where the planning commission actually entertains any of the ADU applications.
This is for building permits.
This
Certainly
would
with any building permit that still would go through the planning commission. Licensing is through Montgomery County, but certainly any building permits would have to go through the planning commission.
All right, so I see what you're saying. So the concern is scale, and since that which would become a reality if there was construction involved beyond what the existing home looks like, whether it's an attached or detached, it would require construction.
Right. Now, if it was entirely within the home itself.
Existing footprint, no problem, right? Not footprint, existing structure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would have to do with parking too, by the way. So if there's a public ways permit involved, then that would also apply there.
Yes, that requires an approval. Correct.
What is
Okay.
the
I don't really
position going?
understand how, it seems to me like all that's already covered in the ordinance. And I don't understand why the PC would need a broader authority. And I also don't understand how that saying that it has to agree with the comprehensive plan means that an ADU approval or building permit would be conditional on HPC's recommendations. I don't understand the connection really.
There's already language there that that I think it's I think the language is that it's I mean, I'd have to pull out the language, but there's a condition in there for the ADUs that they should follow the design guidelines of that's set by the HPC. But the planning commission on building permits doesn't usually, I mean, it's advisory to the homeowner. But for instance, in subdivision, when there's a subdivision, is when that authority for the master plan gets thrown in. So when we're just doing building permits, the HPC has a review and discusses it with the homeowner basically and gets the homeowner to comply with our suggestions or not.
Right.
But the planning commission gets the review, but they're not able to set any conditions on that building permit based on our recommendations. They don't have that authority.
Why should they now? I mean, what's different? I don't understand.
Well, this is more like a subdivision, especially if you have, so it's not a subdivision because it's subordinate, but if you have a separate structure, well, the planning commission now has the possibility to look at because basically it's all a matter of scale.
But there are already restrictions in place. And if you throw that in there, wouldn't the planning commission still have to note something very specific in the comprehensive plan that where there is no compliance? I mean, it seems to me like all that's already in. I just don't understand why it's needed. I don't.
Well, basically, we're going into, I mean, there's a potential for a lot of change here, and we don't know what it is. So this is a protection for the town to make sure that change is going to be within the historic character of the town. If you have to go property by property, what will be possible? It's really hard to figure it out. So this allows us to deal with each property as it comes up.
But I don't know why you can't do that anyway. This just sounds dangerous to me, to be honest. And
well, the other part is dangerous too. So,
well, no, I mean, part of what Rasic was suggesting is because the ordinance creates this whole new paradigm that we think there should be periodic reviews. That it's not that it's a dynamic ordinance that could be open to changes depending on kind of what comes up and what maybe is needed.
Oh, we don't want to do that.
Pardon
Okay,
me?
Paula, this is a public hearing.
Oh, sorry. I
Debate
took up too much time.
Per se, the wisdom of the proposed modifications or amendments to the ordinance. The council will be doing that, and then of course, if and when any changes are made to the planning commission proposal, then there will have to, we usually, if it's dramatic or if it's controversial, in the past, we have had another hearing to ensure that we've heard what everybody thinks about the revised ordinance. If it's small stuff like, you change 800 to 1,000 or to whatever, then we won't necessarily go for another public hearing. But so let's leave the arguments for.
Okay, sorry if I went off too much.
But no, it's really helpful to actually hear the two of you. It really is. It's very helpful to hear, the passion on both sides of that. It's helpful because it gives us more of a balance when we're trying to decide what to do. So this is good. But
I don't know if HPC is finished, and if they are, did you want me to say the two changes we suggested or not?
Yes, I think they're done, and
Are you all finished? Okay. All right, so I'm going to read it just so I make sure I get it right, since I'm not just speaking for myself. First, the definition of household. is confusing in the ordinance. And the ordinance states that a person living alone or any one of the following groups living together as a single housekeeping unit and sharing common cooking, sanitation, and sleeping facilities. One, a household could be any number of people related by blood, marriage, adoption, or guardianship. Two, up to 5 unrelated people. Or 3, 2 unrelated people and any children, parents, siblings, or other persons related to either of them by blood, adoption, or guardianship. That was taken, I think you all took it from Montgomery County. And what the RASEC comment was that modern households come in many forms due to economic constraints and cultural traditions and lifestyle, and to encourage and support cultural diversity, economic relief, and lifestyle preference, we suggest a simplified definition of household to be a person living alone or any group of people living together as a housekeeping unit and sharing common cooking, sanitation, and sleeping facilities. So that's a suggestion for the definition of household. And the other suggestion is that the draft ordinance places a limit of 2 occupants over 18 are allowed to reside in an ADU, yet 2 bedrooms are allowed, and this eliminates many arrangements, such as a couple with an adult child with a disability, or a couple and an adult friend, or a couple and a caretaker, just as some examples. We suggest that the occupancy requirements for ADUs be defined by the definition of household rather than the number for occupants or an age limit. And I already talked about the periodic reviews that we suggested.
Okay, well, while we have some planning commission members here, maybe we can have comment on the 18-year-old. Was that the 2 18-year-olds? Was that from the county's ordinance?
Mhm.
All right.
We felt that was something that the council ought to decide.
Mhm.
In fact, the definition of household and the number of occupants, the planning commission felt that this was not something that we usually make a determination of. So we put in the Montgomery County language, expecting that the council would decide the best way to handle it.
Yes, okay, that's, I mean, I could show the ordinance. It does have the council, as Georgette just alluded to, that they just took the Montgomery County language and felt it was the council's business to review that or change it, and they were not going to propose it. So thank you.
John, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Can I just interject something on the Montgomery County reason for that?
You
The
can.
reason they have that is so that it is an accessory dwelling unit and they're not making it into multi-family units. And that's why there's a differentiation between the definition of a household and the people within it. At least that's what somebody said from Montgomery County to me.
Okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense right off the top, but I mean, you're adding one more unit to a structure. Multi-family doesn't even come into it. It's not even part of the discussion. So why would anybody need to distinguish it from multifamily? I mean, there's just no multifamily. Anyway, okay.
That would be a question from Montgomery County, John. I was just expressing what they said to me to get clarification when I read this before tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, all right, let's go on to any other comment.
We have a question.
We have.
The Englishes would like to speak to the testimonial part of tonight's meeting.
Okay,
Is this a good time for that?
you're on.
Craig and I already have submitted a letter of explanation and a floor plan and a exterior picture to the town, and it can be found on the town's website in the materials on this topic. So please take a look at that if you haven't seen it. But basically, we've lived here for more than 48 years, added a couple different additions to our house. And now that our children are in their 40s, our house is too large for us. And unless we can establish another source of income, we'll be forced to move because of the cost of living here. We have the kind of addition that is perfect for that middle example of the already attached 2-bedroom, 1-bath, little living room wing that is on the part of our house that is closest to the town maintenance shed. We built it 34 years ago, and we think it will be perfect to make it an little apartment.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know us, maybe a couple people,
Probably not.
our house is at the end of Center Street, addressed Maple Avenue, on the same Center Street near the maintenance shed, big brown house. And we built a addition for our girls, as Mary Lou said, 34 years ago. And it would be a perfect ADU with very little work. We can change it into a rentable apartment, and we won't alter the house in any way from the way it is now,
Except
other
to add a
than
front door.
other than add a front door. And so this issue is very relevant for us, because I guess it all started precipitating in our heads when we got our county tax bill this year, and it just
Property tax.
not just about knocked our socks off. And Mary Lou's not working anymore, and my business, after more than 50 years having my studio and working here in Washington Grove, is starting to wind down a little bit. So we really need the extra income, and we don't want to go anywhere. We love Washington Grove. We love our neighbors. We've been so blessed to be in a wonderful community, as you all know. This is just a great place to live, and we want to continue to live here. And having an ADU would make that possible for us. We could have monthly rent checks coming in that would supplement our income in a way that would really help us out a lot.
And we want to follow all the rules and regulations. We also are happy to be a test case if there's such a thing. Anyone's welcome to come and see what we want to do, what we have done, what we inspect, and what have you. But according to everything that we read, we meet the requirements in terms of space and room to park plenty of the appropriate number of cars in the driveway and so forth.
I have a question for you, Craig and Mary Lou. Do you know? I mean, I've seen the diagram. Square feet, those 2 bedrooms in the living area.
It's a little over 500 square feet.
Okay, so it's well within any numbers we're talking about.
Okay.
Any other questions for us?
When we go over to inspect, probably on a weekly basis, what will you be serving?
For you, popcorn.
Well,
Can I
Jeff,
move
there's
in?
plenty of ice cream to be found
Yeah.
in this household.
Okay, actually, I'm going to suspend the public hearing just for a moment. You mentioned your reassessment. We got ours as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just waiting a few weeks to find out how many people got them. But ours was an astonishingly high, it was 33%,
Oh, no.
of which all of that was on the structure. So it was 50% increase in the structure, no increase in the land value. It was quite a substantial thing. So anybody who, I'm gonna eventually I'll get on the email and ask others what they're seeing, but I'm just wondering whether it was just us or neighbors as well.
We shared our assessment with our daughter, who's now living in Los Angeles, and she laughed at us.
Well,
Hers was,
Yeah. Hers was
hers
like
was twice as much.
twice as much
But
as
that's
ours.
not the point.
right,
The,
that's the wrong place. You should have come to me. I'll
Yeah.
give.
the percentage, we don't have that information in front of us right now, but the percentage of increase was the biggest jump in 40 years, or 48 years to be exact.
Okay, back to the public hearing. Thank you for those comments. So John McClellan, you want to, was John
Pete?
still there or did he take a break?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Okay,
here.
you care to make a oral contribution beyond or including what you wrote?
Yes, well, yeah, and I know I submitted the one letter back on October 4th, and I'm glad it finally got put up on the website earlier today. But I added to it a little bit, and what I've heard here is I think there has to be a very clear distinction between an ADU and a DADU, and that's a detached accessory dwelling unit. And the reason I've spoken to a lot of people in town, and everybody, just like with what the English is proposed, I don't think anybody has an issue with that type of use on the property, especially when you take into consideration the purpose for setbacks. So in other words, you have these setbacks to protect from light, sound, odor, fumes, I mean chimney if somebody smokes, etc. And all of a sudden now you're allowing a detached ADU, or potentially allowing, to violate all of those setback requirements. So it raises a serious question as to why would a detached dwelling unit have far less setback requirements than a primary structure? It doesn't make any sense. And so the ADU, if it's inside of the premises, I think it meets all the other requirements that we've really been hearing here tonight, as far as an in-law suite. You need some medical assistance on somebody there 24/7. You just want rental income, etc. And to step outside of that box is where we're starting to hear a lot of these other concerns. I would also express that if I have a detached garage, wow, I just have to enclose it. Now I have a DADU, and I basically put my parking spaces and clear off a big section of my yard next to it and just make that into a parking land, which also I think kind of offsets a lot of what the environmental, I don't know what we call that committee in Washington Grove, looking out for the environment. What do we call it, the Green Committee or something? I don't know. But you also look at a detached dwelling unit, the amount of energy they're going to use from heat, air conditioning, just living, because it's in a detached unit. So to me, I just want to express, I'm in full support of the ADU as long as it's within the primary structure. I have major concern if it's a detached dwelling unit because I haven't heard a good reason for it. Number one. And then number two, I'll bring up the commercial corner. You have no idea what you're getting into if you think you're gonna have mixed residential, commercial use up here at the commercial corner. Apparently somebody in the town has been talking with the landlord because she has an architect up here that's already redesigning the building and potentially putting on apartments under the flat section of the back of this structure. I think she's contemplating up to 8 apartment units. So I don't think we have the capacity or the structure to do it. I think it would be grossly unfair to the neighboring residents to be looking at the back of that on the structure. So from the commercial area, I would recommend that that should be completely removed from the section. And then in my letter, I went through the different sections that just basically delete the DADU, but keep the rest of it pretty much intact. And then one last question I'd have for the HPC and the Planning Commission. You said like this 800 square foot living space. What are you going to do about the units that already exist that exceed that square footage? I.e. the apartment on Brown Street, right across the backside of where I live. Bill, I believe I forget his last name, is the new owner. The old Kirchhoff apartment.
Mhm.
If it's over 800 square feet, what are you going to do? You can't grandfather it. Anyway, just some thoughts.
I'm sure you didn't expect an answer, John, but it's a question.
Well, yeah. And as far as enforcement is concerned, John, you know, there's been a bee up my beehive for a long time, is you've got an art studio across the hall that's in direct violation. We've known about it. Nothing's been done. I actually lost a service rep who couldn't take the fumes. And now that person is actually residing up here, and this is her primary residence for the past 2 to 3 months. So if we're going to start enforcing things, I'd love to see it because it's been killing my business. That's it. Unless somebody has a question for me.
Anyone have a question for John, since he's made a very specific proposals? Well, he's made some comments about the commercial corner. I mean, I read the ordinance carefully. Looked to me like it allowed for an ADU in the commercial corner. It certainly didn't allow for 8. So I think what you were referring to was a change in use, which is a totally separate from this, this thing. You know, this is accessory dwelling unit, and is not the issue. The issue you raised, John, is a change in the uses at the commercial corner.
Yeah, John, if you call me, I can give you, I can give you not John Compton, John McClellan. I can give you an update on what's going on over there with the architects and everything. Give me a call, okay?
It's way too.
No, that's okay. This isn't the place for it. And that really is secondary to, that's really secondary to my concern about the detached dwelling unit, which, and I've spoken to about 10 or 12 people in town. I've got a big consensus over. A lot of people feel the same way, and I'm encouraging them to send things in, but they're concerned to do so for different reasons that this isn't the forum to discuss right now. But anyway.
Isn't this the forum to discuss? I mean, if people in town, we as town council, John, want to know. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'd like to know concerns about the amendment to the zoning, and if some of those concerns are like they don't think that they can express their view because it's unpopular or whatever. I mean, I'd like to know, and you know, if people have, I think it's important for us because I think that we need to make a holistic decision on this, and certainly the fact that you have a wide variety of different groups weighing in with different concerns from a variety of different kind of aspects of this issue of housing and the accessibility of housing, environmental concerns, historic preservation concerns. I mean, there's lots of different ways for that this could impact our life and the character of the town. And I'd hate to think that people feel like they kind of can't express their views on any number of the different dimensions that this proposal impacts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for a lot of people. The one theme, I mean, it came up was, and like I said, I don't know if this is really the time or the place to do it, was they expressed potential kickback or
John,
concern.
and respectfully, Rob, hypothetical.
Yeah,
And
I'd rather have them say it directly.
Are really, I mean, we got enough to worry about, to discuss on real issues that are really sitting in front of us. When and if somebody proposes some change at the commercial corner or proposes discussing it even, then would be absolutely the right time to.
Oh, I don't get me. I'm sorry. Maybe
100%. You don't want to discourage anybody from expressing opinions on that. But
I wasn't talking about the commercial corner. I understood John. I understood John to be
issues that aren't issues yet. We just don't have the bandwidth to do it.
No. I wasn't suggesting
tonight. We don't. Okay.
Can you? Are you able to hear me? I wasn't suggesting that we.
Let's go back to the ADU ordinance.
I was not suggesting that.
No, I think Joan, you had your hand up over there at some point.
I was not suggesting that we talk about the commercial corner. I thought that John made a comment that there are a number of people in town that he's spoken with who have concerns about the zoning amendment.
John, you didn't have something you wanted to say.
I did have something, but I was letting Robert finish.
Yeah.
Well,
we didn't hear you. For some reason, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, I gather that.
I can hear you.
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear Rob. I can hear Rob.
I can't hear anybody. Oops. Barbara, you're off too.
Oh.
That might be
no.
John, that might be a you issue.
It's a you issue. Yeah. It can't be, John.
Yeah. Well,
I sound
anyway.
Bro, it never happened.
Okay, who does sign language here? Come on.
Okay, Joan, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, I have a question talking about the detached ADUs. And a lot of people have garages, but what are the setback requirements for converting a garage into an ADU?
Georgia, you're not going to answer that? You're muted.
Yeah.
So it's an accessory dwelling unit. So if you look in the ordinances, those have not changed. As John said in the beginning, the setbacks have not changed.
So what's the my garage was obviously built before there were setbacks. So what's the current setback for a garage?
Well, it depends on your
Yeah, it depends on the lot. There's a section of schedule of standards in our ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's referenced in the zoning text amendment, the proposed.
Right. So it depends on what depends on what zone you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just look it up from there.
Yeah.
Okay, what is it? Where is it again?
Section 9 of, I guess that's section.
Seven.
No, it should be 7.
Okay, of Article 7, Section 9,
Article 7,
schedule of standards.
Yeah.
Okay, my second concern, I had asked during one of the planning commission meetings, how many properties would be affected by this? And they said that wasn't their job, that would come up when the town council was considering the ordinance. how do we get an estimate of how many properties we're talking about in Washington Grove?
What's the relevance of that question for us to do that?
To see, because to see what the potential would be for changing the town with detached ADUs.
Just detached or attached and detached?
I'm mostly concerned about the detached.
What is Joan, is your question, does the planning commission or the town itself know how many properties are potentially eligible to have a detached ADU built on it under the parameters of the amendment?
Exactly.
That's a good question. Does the planning commission know?
No.
No.
I don't know how we could do that because, you know, you could have a tiny house that's 100 square feet,
Yeah.
you know, 10 by 10. And I mean, that could fit in a lot of places, but a house that small is not going to
That's a prison
appeal
cell.
to many people. So, you know, I think Joe Clark asked that same question, and I think it's a good question, but I just don't know, even if we attempted to try to answer it, I don't know how we would answer it.
Yeah.
Is it true that most of the properties that would be allowed to have detached ADUs could also subdivide if they chose to do so?
No.
No.
Is that not true?
No.
I don't know.
No.
Because I don't know, I mean, which is worse, if, I don't know if that's true.
Just, I sort of eyeballed it when I was looking at this. And in the RR2 zone, you can have a lot of the houses could have detached ADUs. I would say over half, probably 60% of the RR2 zone could
Do they
possibly
also
have it.
have enough land that they could subdivide if they chose?
Yeah.
But that's what that's my.
No, they can't
No.
subdivide. They can't subdivide, but they could have.
Okay,
They
so
could
it's
have
not an issue.
subdivisions. No, it is an issue. There's a lot of it can, I mean, that's why I think having the safeguards in place with the HVC and the planning commission being able to comment and enforce conditions having to do with historic integrity and character is really a safeguard, because there is a potential, especially and I think John is right about that. John McClellan is right. There is a large potential for detached ADUs in the R2 zone. But again, we don't know how many people are going to want to do it. It could be a positive change. It might not necessarily be negative. And I think with the change that we have in there and the way that it's written, there are safeguards that we can go down this road, and be able to deal with it and maintain the historic character of the town. But I think we need to have all the safeguards in place to be able to do that. And if it turns out that it's not working out, you know, we're going to have to stop it. But I think I think this ZTA does have those safeguards in place.
Yeah, so
But I don't think we should minimize. I don't think we should minimize the potential for change here. There's a huge potential for change, but it depends on how people adopt it, and we have no idea if people are going to run and do this, or they're not. We don't know. But I mean, that's why we have the 800 square foot minimum in place. That really helps it a lot. And it's 800 square feet is the maximum, but there's three other conditions. There's percentage of the lot, and there's also a percentage of the, you know, there's three conditions.
Right.
And it's whatever is least is what's allowed. So 800 is not going to be allowed on all properties.
Yeah, that's in the ordinance, yeah.
And ADUs have been around for a long time now in a lot of states.
Yeah.
And so it's not like we're guessing what's going to happen. We can look at other communities and we've seen it hasn't been such a huge impact right now.
Yeah.
So I can't give you the exact percentage, but it's pretty small how many people actually take advantage of this.
I can comment just that the county was seeing uptake of this much, much less than they had predicted, even for the beginning of the ability to have ADUs.
Mhm.
Not to say it wouldn't accelerate. That could happen in Washington Grove. I just wanted to comment that David summed it up pretty well. That you don't know how this sort of opportunity would be, how residents would utilize this sort of opportunity, whether it would be along the lines of the English has already expressed, where they're looking to stay in their home and would like an additional income and have the ability to have that ADU and have their primary residence. How many would be wanting to expand so that those family members could they have additional family members stay? There's total uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty. But the rate of uptake of this, even call it a pessimistic, which would be a lot of them, isn't going to be very quickly. It will be measured and maybe accelerating, but nevertheless, it will be measured. And like with anything the town has enabled, that we can unenable it or we can alter it. So one of the possibilities for this ZTA is to build in the recommendation that that they're absolutely positively and let me just pick a time period, 5 years, an examination of the utilization of ADUs in town in 5 years, which of course the idea being that how's it working and do we need to make any alterations? Since we're in total control, we're a small town, we can easily adapt this sort of thing where there are, as David pointed out, uncertainties. There could be unforeseen consequences. John McClellan's concerned about the character of the residential neighborhood. If there were more accessory buildings that are ADUs built, what would that do to neighbor attractive situation? So, but like a lot of good things, if we could predict the future with clarity, we would be a lot more comfortable making changes, and that explains why we make changes. People resist change because of the uncertainty, not fear of what that change means. In our case, it doesn't mean that we have we have made a deal with the devil and we can't get out of it, because we can. We could, and it seems like that provision, just like the bike path, by the way, if the bike path causes serious problems, we can change the way that bike path is impacting the town, because we can control entry to the town. We can control our own zoning ordinances. So I don't mean to, all these considerations are valuable and important to go in eyes open. But maybe the goal is worth the uncertainty of the unforeseen consequences.
John, I don't want to throw a little bit of cold water on your speech there, but for 18 years, we've had an illegal apartment above a garage right across the street from me, and nothing was done. Nothing was changed. They knew it was an offense, and then I was told for the last 5 years me and some other neighbors, we're waiting for a triggering effect by the planning commission, and we won't let the next people do it. So when the property was changing hands just recently, I talked to the planning commission, and they said, John, we can't do anything. Yeah, we said something about the triggering mechanism, but we're working on ADUs, and that's going to be a moot point anyway. So I hear you. When you say you can change it any time, we can enforce things, we can do this, but the sad reality is that is really not an accurate statement.
Well, I
And
definitely.
I'm just going to be specific with the ADU.
You're citing our regulations, which frankly, in my careful reading of them, are virtually unenforceable. So you are asking for an enforcement of something which I believe is probably unenforceable. Fortunately, we don't have it all over town. We do have some examples where, you know, that the intent has been flouted. The good news is that this ADU proposal will deal with that property for sure. Okay.
Well, it would if it is an ADU that's attached to the primary structure, which means they would have to, because they skirted the issue with a breezeway, and I don't want to go down that path many years ago, but they would have to enclose that to make that attached. And that's one of the reasons why I would not want, again, I do not like the detached unit versus within the unit, because it meets all the concerns like that the English has proposed, and that I've heard from just about every person that wrote in a support for it. Basically, if it's part of the primary structure, it really, really fits our ordinances and the structure of the town without upsetting the horse cart.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it.
Bob?
Yeah, there's that, not continuing on that conversation, but
Thank you.
it was good. I don't know how many people were able to attend any of the state webinars on this, but the state task force is going forward with with their investigation. And if you noticed, they are headed towards having, it appears as though they're headed towards having a state ordinance. And if we don't have a local ordinance, then the state ordinance would take precedence if that was the case. So I think it's probably important that we have a local ordinance, one way or the other, whatever it is, so that we don't get preempted by whatever the state feels we should be doing. In the state, the state's position is actually to maximize the enabling of the ADUs, but the most of the possibility around the state aren't actually dealing with historic districts. So there's other considerations in a historic district that are not necessarily being taken care of. So the other points, from looking at that, there are many jurisdictions that require owner occupancy of the primary dwelling. This apparently we have not said that that's a requirement. One negatives reading the literature about not having an owner occupancy requirement is that potentially a developer could come along and buy a property and essentially have two rental units that are there, and that's sort of hedging on towards what John was talking about, having a multi-family situation. And then the third thing I wanted to point out that the accessory dwelling unit requirements for lot coverage are 25% and 30%. But in this ordinance, an ADU accessory dwelling unit is 10%. So there is potentially a conflict between, like what Joan was saying, if you have a garage and you want to turn it into an ADU, is the 25% the controlling lot coverage, or is the 10% the controlling lot coverage? So you may want to take a look at that.
Okay. Okay. We got a lot of other people here. Hopefully, I mean, they may be just listening. We've almost been at this for a little over an hour and 15 minutes. Does anybody else have any comments directed at the ordinance? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. The intention of the council, I'll speak for the council, although I'm the mayor, is to entertain the ordinance at the February meeting and start some discussion. Obviously, based on what we've heard here, there are a number of issues that need to be that the council may feel need to be addressed before they want to act on this ordinance proposal that has been introduced, and the council does need to either adopt, reject it, or alter it in, potentially, as in the past, fairly recently, it could be sent back to the planning commission for alteration. There's a variety of things available, but the next step is to start discussing the what we've heard today, and of course, all of these concerns. I think that Barbara was going to speak to some just forward thinking as to, you know, if there are revisions, how will we go about finishing this ordinance, getting it to the point of a vote in our lifetime?
Right, in our lifetime. I like the way you said that, John. Yeah, so this is really helpful tonight to hear everybody's point of view on the different aspects of it. And I know that I and the other counselors have been reading the written input as well. And my suggestion would be is after we have like an opening discussion in our town council meeting next month, to form a smaller committee who can really start to hammer some of these things out and really walk through the comments that were made and consider each one carefully. And a lot of times that's done and it's better in a smaller committee. It can be more streamlined and more efficient. And so that's what I would suggest. I know Peter has expressed interest, and Eva, and I would be interested in doing that as well. So that would be one way of moving forward, to assign it to this very small committee. And of course, we would continue to get input from any residents or any commissions or committees that wanted to, as long as we were working on it, and then come back with something, you know, closer to the final version for the town council to approve as a whole, you know, in a town council meeting. So that would be the general outlines of the plan.
Okay. The public hearing record will remain open through the council meeting in February. As I suggested earlier, and if indeed some revisions are seem advisable, and a small group puts together those revisions, depending on how extensive they are, there would be, there would be additional public comment opportunities for residents. In Washington Grove, nobody wants to do anything that everybody hasn't had plenty of opportunity to weigh in on and give everybody their advice and thoughts. So this isn't going to happen. We're not under the gun on this one. But by the same token, we don't want it to drag on longer. There's other issues. So I think we have a plan. Thanks everybody. And we'll give a brief review in the bulletin, and then take it up in the council on February 12th. Okay.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
John.
Thank you, Planning Commission. for your
Thanks,
work.
everybody.
Charlie.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Good night,
night.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Right.